On camera, actually.
That's right. All right, good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Daf Kuf Gimel. We stopped at the second of the long lines on Kuf Beis and Beis. I actually wasn't supposed to be here tonight, but last night I found out there were 9 inches of snow falling today in New York. So I changed my flight to a 6:15 a.m. 2 6 a.m. flights in a row. I do not recommend it. Do not recommend it. But don't worry, I upgraded myself to first and slept like a mensch on the way home. So it's fine. I managed. Okay, let's talk about important things. The Gemara teaches us the following. Very cryptic brisa. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis teach us we're on Kuf Beis, Amud Beis, 2 lines into the wide lines, 10 lines from the bottom. Halokech sada b'shem chavero. If I buy a field, but I do it in your name, ein kofeno so limkor. I can't then go to you to prove that it belongs to me. Okay, let's just be clear. I buy this, and I say, this says I'm buying this in the name of Gerald. So it sounds like to the seller that I'm not buying it for me, I'm buying it for you. But really, I was just using your name. We'll see soon what this means, but that's what it says. I, the buyer, can't go to the third party and say, I use your name, but actually I want you to just prove that it's mine. Write me a shiur that says you don't actually own that. It's very weird. We don't understand what this means yet. The imamar lo almanas. However, if the way that the purchase was from me, from the buyer, where I said on condition, then kofino solim kor, then taka, we do force the third party to produce paperwork that indicates that really it doesn't belong to him, but it belongs to me. So says the Gemara, what we should all be thinking, which is my kamar. I have no idea what this means, because there are some brises we think we have a clue. This isn't one of them. It just makes no sense. So really what's happening over here is as follows. Amar Rav Sheshes hachi ka'amar halokech sadeh mechavero b'shem reish galusa. When someone would invoke the name of the reish galusa, it would prevent all of the people who were me'arer from being me'arer. No one would complain when it was the reish galusa. This was a chash of a person. He was the head of the galus. So he would kind of invoke the name of the reish galusa really to quiet all of the naysayers on the sale, and it worked. But under those circumstances, ein kofino so reish galusa limkor. But you can't then force the reish galusa to produce paperwork indicating that that the reish galusa really doesn't own it and Phil really owns it.
That's like me saying that
That what?
and I'm buying this on behalf of the president.
Yeah. That's why the Gemara says that it's not reasonable for me to then force the reish galusa to be matriach to produce the paperwork, but the kinyan still works. We'll see the relevance of this relative to yesterday's Gemara soon, because there are those who would, in theory, have looked at this and said, "What kind of kinyan is that?" It's one thing if me and you make a sale, but if I invoke a third party and say I'm buying it in the name of the reish galusa, how does that work? Good. It should bother you. It's correct. Okay. However, v'imamar almanas, my sale is conditional on the third party agreeing to produce paperwork. Then kofines reish galusa limkor. Then the reish galusa taka does have to, because then the reish galusa kind of sort of owns it, because it was conditional on that it would work out that way. Now, this is answer number 1 as to how we understand this brisa. But let's ask a kasha on that. On the very bottom line, we're going to see another answer to this brisa. Says the Gemara Amar Mar. We had just said in the Reisha, well, I should say, Rav Sheshes explained the Reisha as follows, that halokeach sadeh b'shem reish galusa, 7 lines from the bottom of Kuf Beis Mid Beis, that if I purchase a property and invoke the name of the reish galusa, we had said, ein kofin oso reish galusa limkor. We don't then require of the reish galusa to provide paperwork that indicates that that which I purchased is actually mine. We can't force him to do that. He wasn't bichlal connected to any of this. Now, what does that imply? Nichlal de mikna kanyale, that I, Phil, who invoked the reish galusa's name, it implies that I actually would have made a kinyan, which bothers a lot of us because, again, it sounds like there's a feature here where there's a third party, but the third party is clueless of the transaction. So it sounds very odd that the transaction should work. And says the Gemara, if it's true that this brisa is accurate, then lema pliga de b'nei ma'arava, this would disagree with some of the shitas we saw yesterday, Rav Yochanan and others, de amre v'chi miho dio lebal chitin sheyikne chitin lebal abayis. They had argued yesterday in the Gemara that if I asked you to take money and go buy chitin, and you in fact bought chitin, you were never you were never makna them back to me. So there's a shita that says that unless all of the parties know exactly what's going on, there is no kinyan. So perhaps this brisa, which says there is a kinyan, even if I invoke the name of the Reish Galusa without Rishos, perhaps the shita of the Bnei Ma'arava would not agree with this. Says the Gemara, if that's your argument, then there's no stira. Lo kasha. Kigon de'od lebal sadeh ve'od inhu l'sadeh. Now, really, I did invoke the name of the Reish Galusa, but I told the owner why I'm doing it. I told him, look, it's really just me and you. Publicly, I'm going to say the Reish Galusa's name so that everybody gets off my back. And I'm going to say the same thing to the Eidim, Vodinu Lesade. And that way, yes, I'm invoking the name of the Reish Galusa, but I'm only doing so for external political reasons. But for the halachic kinyan, please know it's just me and you in this transaction. Very good. That's an answer. This is called playing politics. I work in the Jewish not-for-profit sector. This is my day, every day. I want to give you a dugma. Yesterday, I met with two different institutions in Woodmere. One was more Haredi, one was more centrist. The tochen that I gave over was the same, but the framing was very different. You gotta know who you're talking to. I used some Yiddish words. I hope they were the right Yiddish word. I don't know. I don't know. It's different. You just have to know who you're talking to. And this is a true story with the program that we're pushing. When it comes to the Haredi institutions, we share with them the haskamas we have from the Rabbanim. With the centrist institutions, we highlight the research. He's saying, I know people are going to complain about this purchase. So I'm just going to say, really, it's just a me and you transaction, I would say to the seller. But I'm going to invoke the name of the Reish Galusa in order to cover my bases. Therefore, if I don't say Almanas, then I'm not going to force him to do the paperwork. If I do say Almanas, that means the Reish Galusa knows about it, triangle, and then he has to produce paperwork. Afal that he's really not part of the transaction. That's a real answer. That answers up. That answers up the Bryson nicely. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. The problem is, Almanas, that seems to mean, and when we say Almanas, that Kofin also Reish Galusa Limkor, the Brisa says clearly, according to Rav Sheshes, according to this interpretation of the Brisa, that the Reish Galusa would be forced to produce paperwork. But really, that's not fair. Amai. V'lema Reish Galusa, the Reish Galusa could argue, Lo yikraichu be'ena, I don't want your kavod, below zilusai chubeina, and I also don't want to be disgraced by you. Stop talking about me. Leave me alone. I have a job, but I don't want you to invoke my name. You don't want the politics of the sale? I don't care. That's not my problem. Stop invoking my name. I don't want the false kavod, and I don't want the annoyance of my office now having to produce paperwork for you. And therefore, we reject Rav Shesh's response. And Ella Amar Abaye. Abaye then gives a different response to our very cryptic brisa, and that is as follows. Hachika Amar, slightly different. Halokech sada b'shem chavero, and he invokes the name of the Reish Galusa. Ein kofen es ha-mocher limkor zimnachrisi. So there's two levels of my conversation with the seller. The first is that, hey, buddy, I want to buy your property. The second is, by the way, I'm going to be invoking the name of the Reish Galusa. After we have our initial star, please write me another one that says that really the Reish Galusa doesn't own it. And same ruse, but the Reish Galusa is totally aside. He's not even involved. And the question is whether or not the seller has to produce a second document. One is the actual transaction between me and him, the kinyan, and the second would be the ruse to get people to stop complaining. The imamar lo almanas, and had it been that I said to you, the seller almanas, then kofen es hamocher limkor, because I was talking to you, you know. Now, in the previous case, the Reish Galusa may not have ever known until after almanas, but he may not have ever known. Here, I'm talking to you, the seller. I want to buy this on condition that you'll write to me that second document. Then he has to. Now, Amar Mar, Kuf Gimel Lamed Aleph, 3 lines down. Halokech sada b'shem chavero. We had said in the Brisa that if I buy a property, quoting the name of a friend, the Reish Galusa, we said, Ein kofen es hamocher limkor zimna achrisi. We don't force the hand of the seller to produce a second document. So says the Gemara, I mean, Pshita, why would he have to produce the second document? It wasn't conditional. So the Gemara says, Ma'udatema, I might have thought the following. Matzi Amar le, made the yadas ana lenafshoy shkilna. You know that I was only in this to take it for myself. You, the seller. I told you I really wanted this for me. I was only invoking the name of the Reish Galusa for my own benefit. Upanchia be'almahu de kabaina, and I just needed a little bit of cushion, a little bit of security to get all the naysayers to stop complaining. V'zuzi b'chdi lo shadin. I wasn't going to be throwing money into this, knowing that it would cause problems for me. Ela adaita de kasav li, this is a mistake. Ela adaita de kasav li. The whole reason why we should do this is that you should write for me a second star that indicates that the Reish Galusa really isn't involved. Star achrina. Kamash malan to amar le, that the seller can say, in yana avdilach bahade hahu dezavnis le bishmei. I understand. V'yichtov lach shtara achrina. So we could have discussed that my only interest is in getting this property done. I really don't care about what you're talking about. So in the first case where he doesn't say almanas, he does not have to write it. But if he says almanas, then he does. Imamar lo almanas kofinas hamochel. Of course, it says the Gemara pshita. Obviously, if I tell you I'm buying this on condition that it's not owned by the Reish Galus and that you write me the second star, then of course, Pashat, the seller has to write it. I actually didn't say it to you, the seller. I said it to witnesses while they were in the same room as you. And what did I say? I need you guys to write me that second star. Again, the ruse of the Reish Galusa to get everybody off my back. And maybe the seller could have said, Amina, I would have said, Shtara mehayach de kashaklis bishmei ka'amris. You should get a star from the person whose name you invoked. Go over to the Reish Galus and get it. Kamash malan, the Amar le, no, lahachi tarchi v'amar lehu le'edim. I went over to the Edim Kamach, and the Edim were standing in front of you. Deminachu de kabaina, and I need it from you. So one of the two answers, either the ruse was the Reish Galusa, and therefore the Reish Galusa has to potentially write me a document, which we rejected. That was approach number one of Rav Sheshes, or approach number two is I'm still invoking the name of the Reish Galusa, but I'm only dealing with the seller. I'm not dealing with anybody else. Either way, the cryptic brisa is explained that way. And that brings us to a piece of Gemara about a third of the way down on Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph. Sounds like a different topic, but we'll circle back shortly. Rav Kahana Yohav Zuza Akitna. Rav Kahana went to the marketplace. He took some money out of his wallet, and he gave it over to buy some flax. Now, he laid out the money. Let's say he spent $10 on the flax. However, he did not yet receive the flax. He just laid out the money. L'sof Iker Kitna. Soon, the cost of flax went up, so he got a good deal. Now, the same amount of flax was $15. Pretty big markup, but just use the numbers for the sake of math. And then, so we have Rav Kahana and the seller. So the seller took Rav Kahana's money but didn't give him the flax yet. Then the flax got more expensive. And then the seller, Zavne Marvise de Kitna, he sold what was really the master's flax. He sold Rav Kahana's flax to somebody else at a markup of $15. So this guy's like, all right, I'm going to make an extra buck. It's us, so you're not allowed to do that, but he did it. So then he had a little bit of a conflict of conscience, and he went to ask a shaila, also the Kamei de Rav. And when when the seller who felt bad for what he did went over to Rav Kahana went to Rav and said, Ma avid, what should I do? Ezel ishkol zuzoi, should I take the money from him? So let's review. My name is Rav Kahana, and you are the seller of flax. I see that you have a really good price. I see the sign, it says $10 for a bushel. And I say, Reb seller, I want to buy this from you. Here's $10. When can I pick up the product? He says, come back tomorrow and I will give you the product. So I've given $10. And then he sells it to someone else for $15, but he feels bad. So he comes to me with the $15. I gave him 10, and then he gave me back 15. I gave him 10, which appears as a loan. And then he gave me back 15, which looks like ribbis. So that's the Gemara's question, where Rav Kahana went back to Rav and said, something's not right here. Now, I wasn't planning on giving him a loan. I gave him this money, but once he sold my product, retroactively, my sale functioned as a loan. And now he's giving me cash that's more than what I gave him. It appears to be ribbis. So Amarle, Rav explains to Rav Kahana, if when he sold it to you, Rav Kahana, Amre, Haikitna, de Kahanahu, that this flax actually belongs to Rav Kahana, so then Zil Shkol, the cotton belongs to you. And if the cotton is now more valuable, it's not ribbis, no problem at all. But Be'ilo, if he didn't identify it as your flax, so then lo tishkol, then it is taka, a problem of ribbis.
You just gave over the money. It's not.
We're going to discuss what actually happened here, but yes, that's correct. He didn't do anything. He did give money, but that. I don't know. I don't know what futures are. What
What
are futures?
When you agree to buy something in the future for a
Fixed?
thing, yeah. So I think
Not holding. In general, I'm not holding, and I certainly don't know what futures are. Sorry, I missed this banter. What was that?
The property never left the storekeeper's shop, and you just gave over cash, there's no opinion.
No,
Thought the balance is there.
but you're missing one point. Forget the Kenyan. There's a loan happening.
No.
Right, because there's no opinion,
Because there's no opinion.
that's how you look at that time now,
Yes.
exactly what it does.
Okay.
But Rav's answer to Rav Kahana is not really like that. Rav is saying, and I'm conceptually true, even if it's true that there's a Kenyan, it's only a loan if it's only not ribis if he identified the bushel as Rav Kahana's bushel, because then the bushel is Rav Kahana's, not the money. Now the bushel is Rav Kahana.
Not.
It's only not ribis. That's correct. It's only not ribis if the seller identified the bushel as Rav Kahana's. Yeah, I gave you 10, you gave me 15 tomorrow. It may not be a din d'oraisa because it wasn't an actual halal, but it might be a vak ribis, but it smells like ribis. It doesn't, yeah, it's not good. That the Gemara is going to discuss that too. Gemara is going to discuss Pikodon also. It doesn't matter. It'll be the same din because the pasuk speaks that way about, we'll see, Pikodon obis sumes yad. Yeah, very good. You guys are all on the right page here. Okay, so Kiman says the Gemara, this unique shita of Rab, who is this like? Says the Gemara, must be kibnei ma'arava de amre miho deal lebal chitin shiik nechitin lebal mos. There's no Kenyan over here. So Stan, you were right on the mark. There's no Kenyan over here. Nobody went back and said what Hagbah did you? The Gemara doesn't say he did Mashiach, he did Hagbah, he did a Kenyan Sudar, Kenyan Chalipen. There's so many avenues you could have done. The money mineu bay is not a Kenyan. Handing money to someone is not a Kenyan. Remember the directionality. If I hand you money, you're taking from me. You acquired my money, but I acquired nothing from you. Okay, so that's what the Gemara says. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Atu miyoiv Rav Kahana arba v'shakil tamne. Are you telling me that the construct of this transaction was that Rav Kahana gave 4 thinking he was going to get back 8? Absolutely not. Kitna mimelahu da'ikir. This was a market flux. This wasn't a ribis loan of I'm giving you X in anticipation of Y, of X plus. That is totally not what's happening here. First of all, I'm not giving you a loan. Second of all, I wasn't expecting anything in return except for my flax. So now tomorrow you come at me with $15. Why would that be ribis? I wanted flax. The market changed. That's not a loan problem. It's a great kasha. It's not a loan issue. The market changed from yesterday to today. And bein time, I didn't get my product. And you sold it at a higher value. That's not ribis. It's just the market doing its thing. Says the Gemara, it's migzal gazluha. Really what happened is that the seller really stole your product. He got rid of it. Utznan kol gazlan mashalman kashas hagzela. The Gemara says, I made this transaction with you on Monday morning at 9 a.m. On Tuesday, you were about to bring it to my house, and your phone pings that the value of flax jumped by 50%. Yada Yitzhahara, you're a gazlan. You took my product that you don't own, even though we just thought you didn't make a Kenyan. But it's really not. It really isn't. It's not earmarked for you. You sell it at a higher mark. You're a gazlan. The moment he sold it is Shas Gzela. He owes me my product at Shas Gzela, which is now 15 because it's Tuesday now. So says the Gemara, Amre, you're right. There's something else going on here. Hasam amana havai. The conversation that happened between Rav Kahana and the seller was a conversation of amana or emuna, namely that I trust you. There was no Kenyan. It was just a verbal transaction. Below mashche Rav Kahana lekitna. Rav Kahana did not do Mashiach. Rav Kahana does not own anything. It was a verbal transaction with no Kenyan. And says the Gemara, but Rav Lataime, the reason why Rav distinguishes and says that sometimes it's going to be ribis and sometimes it's not, is the Amarav, osin amona beperos, vein osin amona bedamid. We do give validity to amana, to a verbal trusting of the person, when there is an entity involved, in this case, the bushel. If it was only monetary, we would say that there wouldn't be a problem. If it was all verbal, then we wouldn't trust it. That would not work. But over here, because there's a bushel involved, that's why he said that if the bushel was earmarked for Rav Kahana, it would not be a problem of ribbis. And if it is, if there not been a bushel involved, then it would be a problem of ribbis. So a little confusing, but nevertheless, a fascinating case. All right, we're going to be discussing now a new Mishnah. We're about 15 lines from the bottom of the page. Let's get started. Let's say I steal a paper clip from you. Okay, it's very inexpensive, a few pennies. Let's call it a nickel. I don't even think a paper clip costs a nickel. They're probably much less than that. But I steal something that's a shava pruta. V'nishbalo, and I make a shvua that I didn't take it and I'm lying. Yolichenu acharav lemadai. As part of the lav hanitak le'aseh of the heshivas agzela asher gazal, I have to take that paper clip and I have to go as far as Madai, as far as Persia, to give it back to you. Namely, you got to globe trot to get this thing back. Now, we're going to discuss in a moment whether or not that's true when the cost of travel far exceeds the cost of the item stolen. We're going to discuss that because then we have a concern that people won't do tshuva. We're going to spend $965 on a flight for a paperclip, and you're making me do this via dime. I understand why the Torah wants me to hand it to you because I stole from you. Tshuva, got it, understood. But like we got to make sure it all makes sense. But Lamaisa, if it's just a question of walking there, whatever, I have to stretch and get it to you. I have to give it to you in your hand. Lo yitain lo libnova lo lishlucham.
Very, very.
Oh yeah,
And he did it over
a paperclip.
So, like,
100%. I mean, hashkafically, there's a bigger issue, which is anyone who steals basically thinks Hashem will be taking care of them. So you're already starting on a bad footing. So, yeah, that's, by the way, the Ibn Ezra speaks about this with the Isra of Lo Sachmod, about, what do you mean don't covet? Like, Mecha Tesi, don't covet. So he highlights that one of the concerns is that you don't believe that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is taking care of you. That's why you're pining for other people. It's beautiful, actually. It's a beautiful Ibn Ezra. Okay. So the Mishnah continues, Aval, while it's true that you're not allowed to give it to the son or to the shliach, and really you should be giving it directly to the person from whom you stole. However, Aval no sein l'shliach bezdin. You are allowed to give it to a shliach bezdin, and this is, as we will soon see in the Gemara, because of takanas hashavim. Takanas hashavim is a concern that if the bar is so high to return an item, you may not return the item, and then you won't get tshuva, and that is bad for your olam haba. That's not a good thing. And we don't want that to happen. So then it's upon Bezdin to do the stretching and getting the item back to Persia, which is fascinating because what you basically did was throw the financial burden of returning the item onto Bezdin, onto the courts. Right? I mean, like, okay, that's how powerful tshuva is, that the Bezdin has to separate communal dollars and yeah, fine. Yeah, the show, whatever. But I'm just saying it's the tircha is not on the Gazlan. Kind of a beautiful idea, but probably we should just not steal it in the first place, like you're saying. Okay. The imes, if the nigzal, the person who was stolen from, dies, yachzir liyorshav, he should still give it directly to the yorshim. Okay, we're going to discuss a lot of very quick and nuanced cases. Each of these require time, which we don't have. So I'm going to translate it all. We're going to learn it all, but it's splitting hairs case to case. They're very subtle. So let's get started. We're 8-9 lines from the bottom. Nasan lo esakeren. If I returned the principal to you, below nasan lo esachomesh, but I didn't return the 20% knas that I owe you for having stolen what you deserve, what I stolen your item, or machal lo al hakeren. You, the nigzal, were mochel on the keren, below mochal lo al chomesh, but you weren't mochel on the 20%. It's really 25%. Mochal lo al zeh ve'al zeh chutz mipachos shava pruta bekeren. Or really, the nigzal says, I pater you for all of these things with the exception of less than a shava pruta. In all of these cases, eino tzarech lelech acharov. The din of the mitzvah b'heshiva esagzel asher gazal does not require of you to chase him all the way back, hand to hand. That you don't have to give it back to him. However, nasan lo esachomesh ve'lo nasan lo esakeren. If I only gave you the knas dollars, but I didn't give you the keren dollars, or machalo ala chomesh velo machalo ala keren, or the nigzal was mochel me on the chomesh, but but not mochel me on the keren, or machalo al zeh ve'al zeh chus mishav prutzer bekeren, then tzarich lelech acharab. Again, these cases are all very similar to one another, but we should spend time learning them. Next, bottom line. Nosan lo esa keren, v'nishba lo ala chomesh. Let's say that I pay you the keren, and then I make a shvua that I already paid you the chomesh when I didn't. And you're already making a bad mistake here because you're in Bezdin now. Like, this isn't the time to like start lying. This is not a good idea. So what's the din? Hareze mishalem chomesh al chomesh. You lied about chomesh, which means that which you lied about became the keren of your payment, and now there's a chomesh on your keren, which was the chomesh, right? So if I make a shvua, okay, if I make a shvua that I already paid you chomesh and I lied, let's say the chomesh is $8. The $8 that you lied about is now a new keren upon which there's chomesh. So, right, because you lied about chomesh, which made it keren again. He's not bright. He's not bright. Yeah, he's not bright. Right? And look at this. How many loops can you have of keren becoming chomesh? Let's say you keep lying about the chomesh over and over again. Ad she'ismait ha-keren mishava pruta. Until you're almost down to 0. Okay. And then to Tex's point, Kuv Gimel Amud Beis, second line, V'chein bepikadon. These same halachos would be true by a pikadon. Shene'emar, and the word o is not in the pasuk. The pasuk reads bepikadon, o bis sumes yad, o v'gozel, o ashakes amiso, o matza aveda, v'chichesh ba, v'nishba al shaker. In all of these cases, harezeh mishalem keren v'chomesh v'asha. The theft alone requires that you are mishalem keren v'chomesh, and the lying brings about an asham. So says the pasuk, and v'chein b'pikadon. This applies with theft, and it applies with the pikadon as well. Now, one of the things that we saw was that nishbalo if there's a shvua, then yes, the gazlan has to make the trek and hand back the item that he stole to the hands of the nigzal. But lo nishbalo, lo. But had it been that there was no shvua, we would not then obligate the gazlan to find the nigzal. Money. Whose opinion is this? Lo Rabbi Tarfon v'lo Rabbi Akiva. In the following Mishnah, it says the Tanya, but it's an error. In the following Mishnah, we will see that our Mishnah doesn't imply like Rabbi Tarfon or Rabbi Akiva. The Mishnah writes, this Mishnah can be found in Maseches Yevamos. Gazal echad mechamisha. I stole from one of you 5, but ve'eni yodea eze mehen. I don't know who I stole from. V'chol echad omer, and each of you claim osi gazal. This is our case, right? So I stole from one of you. I wasn't paying attention. Let's say we were literally in this room as it is, and there was an iPad on the table. No siman, a brand new iPad in the box. And I know it's one of yours, but I don't know who you are, and I just grab it and run. Now, all of you, or most of you, are lying and saying Osi Gazal. One of you is telling the truth. So what do we do in a case like this when I don't know who I stole from? Oh, so there's a machlokes tanaim. Shita number 1 is what Stan says. That's a shita of Rabbi Tarfon. Maniach gzele beinehem umistalek diber Rabbi Tarfon. Drop it and say goodbye. And then the truth will come out, because that room will start talking, and some guy's going to be like, I just got back from the Apple store. Like, it's mine. And he'll probably, in our world, could bring a raya ladavar, or digitally, whatever. Rabbi Akiva Omer, no. And he says so with a hashkafik slap upside the head. Lozu derech motzi asim avera. This is not the way to get around, or to get out of, I should say, you're having done something wrong. Ad she'eshalim gzela lekol echad ve'echad. Wow, the iPad is $700. You are now down for the count with 700 times 5. Now, money. Who could our Mishnah be like? Rabbi Tarfon, according to the sheet of Rabbi Tarfon, who said, Maniach gzela b'neim umistalek, you just drop the iPad in the room and walk away. Afal gav de ishtaba, whether or not I, the Gazlan, made a shvua, he's still going to hold the same thing. Amar, Maniach gzela b'neim umistalek. I may be required an asham for the lie, but the mechanics of what I do with the item that I stole will be the same of Maniach. And Rabbi Akiva, if you hold like Rabbi Akiva, who held that I have to now buy iPads for all of you because I don't know who I stole from, Afal gav de lo ishtaba, even if I, the Gazlan, don't make a shvua, Omar ad sheyeshalem gzela l'kol, he's not going to change. Ad shem gzela kol echad echad. The shvua won't change the machlokas to Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva one drop. But if you scan back to the first line of our Mishnah, of our Gemara, 6 lines down, there was a diuk from our Mishnah that the shvua does make a difference. So how do we weave in this brais of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon into our Mishnah, when our Mishnah seems to say that the shvua matters in regards to the method of payback, Rabbi Tarfon versus Rabbi Akiva, whereas the actual shitas of Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva seem to not care about the shvua one drop. So the Gemara says 2 different answers. The first answer is right here, a third of the way down. The second answer is 5 lines from the bottom. We're going to learn the beginning of the second answer, and then we'll be stopping 3 lines from the bottom of the page. Le'olam, really, it's Rabbi Akiva. Really, our Mishnah is like the Shita of Rabbi Akiva. Let's review. The Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that if I steal an iPad from a room like this and I don't know who it belongs to, and you all claim that it's yours, so Lemaisa I have to buy everyone a new iPad. Says the Gemara, B'chi ka'amar Rabbi Akiva ad sheyeshalem gzela l'kol echad ve'echad. When Rabbi Akiva says that I have to pay back each of you an iPad, that's hecha di ishtabahu de ka'amar. We insert into this Mishnah conceptually that the shvua is the nafkamina, that only when I, the Gazlan, make a shvua that I didn't steal it, that's when I have to pay each of you an iPad. My taima, why would that be? To Amar Kra, la asher hu lo, yitnenu b'yom ashmaso. The ashmaso, a reference to the shvua, that which I stole, I have to give to each of you because I made a shvua. Rabbi Tarfon, what would you do with this pasuk? He says, Afal gav de ishtaba, even if you promise, avud rabbanon takanta. The rabbanon still made the following takana. Titania, we want to make sure that people are able to have tshuva. So it says the Gemara halfway down, Rabbi Elazar b'Rabbi Tzadok Omer, takana gedola hiskinu, that they made a very big takana. Sheim haisa hotza yisera al hakeren, that if the expense of returning the lost item is greater than the cost of the lost item, mishalem keren v'chomesh lebezdin umevi hashamu miskaper lo. Then he brings the price of what he stole plus chomesh to bezdin, and he brings an asham, and that's how he gets kapara, namely takanos hashavim. We want to make sure that the guy can have tshuva. No one in their right mind is going to no one in their right mind is going to take a paperclip and book a ticket to return the pay. No one's going to do that. Nor is it the chiyuv in halacha according to this shita. That's the only avenue. Bezdin has money instead of the paperclip. I have no idea.
No, because it's saying, the ruach hachamim. If you take the money back from Godwin and from Rivers, that somebody took from you.
Oh, I don't know how to intersect those two. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Because of Takanas Hashavim, this is a little different because you're doing it through Bezdin. It's a little different. I have no idea. Good question. Very good question. So that's what the Gemara says, is that Rabbi Tarfon doesn't have a problem with this because he says that it's Takanas Hashavim. For Rabbi Akiva, what would you say about this Mari Makom with Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Tzadok that says that we have Takanas Hashavim? Says the Gemara, Ki Avud Rabbanon Takanta, when do we have Takanas Hashavim? That's Eicha de Yada Leman Gazle, the Kamahadr Le Mamona Lemare. That's when you know who you're paying back. But let's remember that in our case, I don't know from whom I stole. It could be any of you. However, Gazal Echad Mechamisha de Lo Yada Leman Gazle, de Lo Hadar Mamona Lemare, Lo Avud Rabbanon Takanta. There is no Takanas Hashavim when I don't know who the recipient is. That's fascinating. So if I steal something and I don't know who I stole it from and they live across the globe, I have no Takanas Hashavim, which means I have to pay you back. And Takanas Hashavim won't help me in this case. Asks the Gemara on answer number 1 that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva. Masiv Rav Huna bar Yehuda. We have a brisa. The brisa can be found in Maseches Yevamos again. It's actually a Tosefta. Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Lo nechlaku Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. The machlokes that we just saw by Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, they're not arguing al shalokach echad mechamisha ve'eno yodea me'ezem mehen lokach, that I took from one of you 5, but I don't know who. And in such a case, for sure, they would all agree shemaniach dmei mekach beinim u'mistalik. Even Rabbi Akiva would agree in such a case where it's lokach Alman nechlaku shegazal. Not lakicha. Now we're not talking about I don't know who I purchased it from. That's not what we're talking about. We're only talking about gzela. Shegazal echad mechamisha b'nei adam b'nei mehen gazal. And on the first of the long lines, what would the machlokas be in a case of gzela as opposed to lakicha? That when it's lakicha, everyone agrees that you're meniach umistalek, put it down and walk away. However, when it comes to gzela, so then Rabbi Tarfon omer maniach to make gzela b'neim umistalek, that he agrees still, both by lakicha and by gzela. Rabbi Tarfon would hold the same. Put the iPad down and walk out. But Rabbi Akiva omer lo ein takana shishalom gzela l'kol echad ve'echad. No, with a case of gzela, you have to buy an iPad for everyone in the room because you don't know who you stole from. Now, says the Gemara, I don't like your answer that you said 10 lines ago that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva. Why? Rabbi Akiva distinguishes between whether it was lakach or gazal. That when it's lakach, Rabbi Akiva says that you are meniach umistalek. But when it's gazal, Rabbi Akiva says he has to pay back everyone whatever was stolen. Now, v'isal kadaitach the ishtaba. If the assumption is that I, the gazlan, made a shvua, mali lakach, mali gazal. I made a shvua about something that I didn't know the answer to. I lied. So according to that, why would Rabbi Akiva distinguish between lakach and gazal? Therefore, it's not reasonable to say our Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva. It would make more sense to say like Rabbi Tarfon, who doesn't distinguish between the shvua. That makes more sense. The Ode, and furthermore, Masiv Rava, we have another Mari Makom with Rava. Ma'isa b'chasid echad shelokach mishnei b'nei adam. There was a chassid, and this we'll see soon is a very important terminology. Usually we gloss this over. Today we're going to learn who is referred to in Shas whenever we say Ma'isa b'chasid echad, which I didn't know until today. And the Gemara says that this guy bought something from one of two people. V'lo haya yodeh me'ezeh melakach. Uba lifnei Rabbi Tarfon. He went to go ask a shayla. I bought something. I don't know if it's tax or if it's stan. I have no idea. Amar lo, Rabbi Tarfon said, Hanach demei mekchacha b'neim v'histalek, which is classic Rabbi Tarfon, through and through. He only said that. Put it down, walk away. And then balifnei Rabbi Akiva, just to stir the pot. They went to the other posek to see what he would say. And Amar lo, ein l'cha takana acha tishalem l'kol echad echad. You don't know if you bought from one or two people, then pay both of those people. V'isal kadaitach the mishtaba. And if you think that Rabbi Akiva is talking about a case where there was a shvua, chasid mi mishtaba b'shikra. The case was a case of a chasid. Could a chasid ever lie? That's beautiful. A chasid would never lie. That's what the Gemara says. V'chitema de mishtaba v'hadar have chasid. Perhaps you can say that he lied and felt bad and then he became a chassid. That can't be, because v'ha, something that we will learn later in Shas, in Maseches Tmura, kol hecha de'amrinan ma'aseh b'chassid echad. Anywhere in Shas, when it says ma'aseh b'chassid echad, o Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, o Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Loi. And all of these people were Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Loi, chasidim d'mei ikara havu. It's impossible to say that this person made a shvua and lied. With these two arguments, we reject the Gemara's initial answer that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva, and therefore, Elul Olam Rabbi Tarfon he, really our Mishnah is like Rabbi Tarfon, Umod Rabbi Tarfon Hecha de Ishtaba, and we shtup in the Shvua component even to the Shita of Rabbi Tarfon. That means that we haven't seen this yet, that Rabbi Tarfon actually says in one case, you don't drop and walk away, and that is the difference between whether or not there's a Shvua. My taima. Why would that be the distinction? When there's a shvua, so then you can do that because the Amar Kra la sherhu lo yitnenu bayom ashmaso. You can drop it then, no problem at all, as long as there's ashmaso, as long as there's a shvua. I have a Rabbi Akiva, says the Gemara, afal gavdu lo mishtaba kanis, that even though he didn't make a shvua, we would still make a slap on the wrist, and therefore, not focusing on Rabbi Akiva, but rather on Rabbi Tarfon, we can assume, therefore, that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Tarfon. We're going to stop right here and pick up with a continuation of this sugya Mirz Hashem tomorrow. What's today, Tuesday? Today's Tuesday? Okay, good. We'll pick up tomorrow Mirz Hashem with Daf Kuf Daled, with wishing you all a beautiful night.